like all of you to put your hands together to welcome junior Karim to the stage.
Thank you, Mrs. Singleton. My name's Karim. I'm a junior, and I just got a couple poems I'd like to read to you guys. This first one's called Living is Art. Do I walk damaged or simply deluded, chasing the feel of a melancholic illusion? Pain in the path, the road remains frozen. So I wrote this excuse and stayed beautifully broken. The fuel for your sad songs, the paint for your brush. With drowning comes admiration, even if it breaks us, to become the masterpiece. For that I will lust. Sorrow of my own design, in my heart we trust. And the second one's called Miracle. Grief falls like rain, a rain that freezes all it touches, destroying what's precious and stinging all who stand around it. So we ponder a world where every light is everlasting, a comfort in bloom without immortal fear sharply gazing. Abandon the ideal, for what is bloom without snowfields? If we never learn damage, then there's no warmth when we heal. We are petrified to lose, but terrified into action. To live without fear's impulse is to reduce life into a fraction. Attach yourself to existence. No feelings are forbidden. The pain from grief is fleeting beside the expanse of our condition. The condition to fight, to fail, to lust and to love. To experience this miracle, the flower must first be rained on.
Thank you so much, Karim. We now have a sophomore student coming to the stage. Nandini has a poem for us as well.
Hello, my name is Nandini Parvatham. I'm a sophomore. My poem, Theory of Convergence, reflects on how life, time, and people can move along separate paths but still slowly draw closer together. It's about the patterns that connect things we don't always notice. This is how it goes. The world dissolves like secrets in disguise, a drifting haze suspended in the air. The light bends softly just before the eyes, a prism splitting hope too thin to bear. Through hazy mist, a sudden brilliance breaks, magnesium bright against the darkened sky. A moonlit glow, the silent evening wakes, a steady flame where scattered shadows lie. Life might have moved in perfect measured rhyme if two lost echoes lingered in the air. Two mirrored waves suspended out of time, two distinct curves converging and unaware. Endless horizons stretching far apart, parallel roads with a restless heart. Invisible threads through time remain, a quiet pull beneath the strain. A red string threads through space-time seam, a constant in a broken screen. Distances fade where wanderers run, two quiet paths approaching one. For fate inscribes its arcs in hidden ink, in graphs the walking world cannot yet see. Two separate lines that bend and almost link, approaching slowly in silent symmetry. Like circles turning without an end, endless numbers that twist and bend. Stories settle, quiet and done. Two wandering paths resolved as one.
All right, you guys, let's give one more round of applause to our student writers. That was so brave and awesome. All right, and then we have another one of our LHS own teachers coming up to the stage. Mr. Wieczorek has a song for us. So are you ready, Mr. Wieczorek?
Yes, let me get the two real quick.
No problem. So if you were, was anyone in first hour this morning to see Mr. Wieczorek? All right, y'all, we're gonna get a little bit more from him. So I am so excited to hear him perform some more. Mr. Wieczorek writes songs not just about math, but also about life. So without further ado, yes?
I'm good to go, yeah.
Okay, great. Here comes Mr. Wieczorek. Put your hands together.
How's everybody doing? Yeah, all right. So I thought I'd play a song. You guys ready for some music? Woo. So I've been songwriting since I think around 2020 during the pandemic is when I got more into music, and I've written songs about a lot of different things, but the one I was gonna play right now, I wrote back in 2022, which is when I graduated from, or no, not when I graduated from high school, that wouldn't make sense. It was my 10 years of being out of high school, so I graduated in 2012, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to write a song about high school memories and like the things that I still remember 10 years later from being in high school, the things that stuck with me. And so what I did is I guess part of the other reason I wanted to write the song is I currently, at that moment in time in 2022, I had a group of senior students, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to see what they thought were their big highlights from high school compared to what my big highlights from high school were. And so I polled them and asked them, like, what are some of the big things that stuck out to you in high school? For me, it was like trying to run to class to get there on time, and homecoming dances, prom, all the fun milestones of high school. And so kind of just a collective group of ideas of my own from the students I asked, and also from staff too. Like if I think I pulled staff that year too and asked them what are some things you remember from high school, and all those thoughts and collections became a song that I wrote, and it's called Delivered to Your Doorstep. And the reason I called it that is because when I was writing it, an Amazon package was delivered to my doorstep. So you never know when a good song title is gonna hit you in the right moment. So I hope you like it. And how many seniors out there? Got seniors? Some seniors? Yeah. All right, yeah, well, if you're on your journey to being a senior, like you've got lots of high school memories to collect, and yeah, hopefully this song means something. That you laughed, the times that you cried, and there are times that you wish you could just hit rewind. 10 years from now, you won't recall that one equation you couldn't solve. Or that paper that you stayed up writing all night long. Go to the flash drive in your mind, and you'll find making plans with friends on Friday nights, running through the halls to get to class on time. The day that your diploma finally arrived, hidden inside were memories delivered to your doorstep. Dream of the past, the moments that last, and you find that dreams are your boarding pass to go back 10 years from now. You won't recall hydrogen has just one outer shell. Or the day and month that started the War of 1812. Go to the flash drive in your mind, and you'll find coffee runs to Starbucks during lunch, chatting with your favorite teachers to catch up. The day that your diploma finally arrived, hidden inside, the memories delivered delivered to your doorstep. Go now, just go now, just go now, oh just go. Go to the flash drive in your mind, and you'll find the first slow dance with the one you liked, cheering in the stands under the Friday night lights. The day that your diploma finally arrived, hidden inside. Memories delivered to your doorstep. Memories delivered to your doorstep. Thank you. And those of you that have already graduated high school, hopefully that brings back some nostalgic memories from your own high school years. Thank you guys for listening.
Can we get one more round of applause from Mr. Wieczorek? Today's featured guest won the 2024 Mary Higgins Clark Award for her debut novel, Play the Fool. The follow-up, Tricks of Fortune, was called a delicious blend of suspense and madcap humor by the Library Journal. Her other work has appeared in the Bellingham Review, The Collegist, and Black Fox Literary Magazine. She has also written paranormal romances, award-winning movie reviews, and poems that have not only been published, but have also been read by up to dozens of people. Please put your hands together and welcome Lina Chern.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lina Chern. Thank you for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I'm very, very excited that your high school is offering you this opportunity to learn about something, a career in particular, that can be, I think, a little mysterious. When I was in high school, I never had anything like this, and I would have absolutely loved it, because I think there's this real lack of information about how one becomes a writer. You know, we go to bookstores and we see those glossy books on the shelves, and there's really not a whole lot of information about how one gets to be one of those people with books on bookstore shelves. So I'm going to start with a little bit of information about me. Again, some of this is stuff you've already seen, but I just wanted to let you know that here's my glossy author photo. Here are my very fancy pants book covers. Here I am talking about my books on TV. And here I am accepting the Mary Higgins Clark Award from the Mystery Writers Association of America at the Edgar Awards ceremony in New York, which is sort of like Mystery Nerd Prom. It's like the Oscars of the mystery world. And the reason I'm starting out with all of this bragging is that when I was a kid, when I was your age, here's my very non-glamorous photo. When I was a kid, and if you had told me that I would someday achieve some of the things that I showed you, I would have thought you were crazy. Because the fact was, I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I just never really thought it was something a normal person like me could do. There wasn't a whole lot of information on it. Certainly nothing like this at my high school. And you know, I came from an immigrant family. This is something that you guys some of you out there might relate to. I was born in the former Soviet Union. This is actually my naturalization photo from when my family got US citizenship. And as is common in a lot of immigrant families, you know, when folks come from places with a lot of economic anxiety, they have very specific ideas about what are and are not acceptable career paths for their kids in order to be able to support themselves. And so careers in the arts were not something that were really encouraged in my family. They're not something that I thought I could really do. So being a writer was a little bit like being an astronaut. It just seemed very exotic and inaccessible. So I'm going to start with the first of a few basic principles and tips for anyone who is interested in writing. These tips are very simple. Anyone can do them. They don't take a lot of expensive books or fancy degrees or anything like that. And the first of those is to read. So just a little show of hands. Who out there likes to read when you're not being forced to? Okay. Now, is there anyone out there who thinks they might want to try their hand at writing? Anyone? Not a whole lot of people in this period. Okay, well, my point was that usually the people who raise their hands because they want to learn to write are usually the same ones that read, that do a lot of reading. So for me, basically, reading and writing are very much the same process, because when you write, you read, you take in information, whether you are reading a book or basically just looking at the world in order to observe it. You interpret that information, you make sense of it, and then you turn that information back out into the world in your own voice. Reading already does those first two steps automatically. With writing, you're just putting a third step onto it. And those first two steps are a crucial foundation for writing, because before you can put something out into the world, you have to take something in. If you're putting stuff out without really taking anything in first, that's not really writing, that's more like social media. And when I was a kid, I loved to read. I was a huge, huge science fiction fan, and my favorite writer was this guy, Harlan Ellison. Look how fabulous he looks in his 1970s finery. He was a very interesting guy. He was this sort of a very big personality. He was at least as known for his personality as for his writing. He was a bit of a badass. I very much wanted to be him. And I read everything of his that I could get my hands on, and it was the first time that I remember thinking, okay, maybe I could try my own hand at this. So I tried to write some science fiction stories like he did, but it was really hard. I was never really happy with anything I wrote because it was never as good as anything that he wrote, or any of the other writers I was reading, like Stephen King or other people like that. And I thought, well, what am I doing wrong here? You know, I wrote in my journal all the time. I filled notebook after notebook with impressions, feelings, thoughts, and that always came very easily to me. I very much enjoyed it. It was sort of a compulsion. I couldn't stop doing it if I tried. But then whenever I tried to write something for an audience, that flow, that pleasure dried up. I couldn't get anything out. And, this was incredibly discouraging to me. I thought for some reason, I was a very smart, I was a very perfectionistic kid. I got straight A's, and I thought, well, what's wrong with me that I'm trying to do this thing and I can't do it as well as someone who's been writing for 30 years. At the time, this seemed very reasonable to me, although right now it seems kind of silly. So let me ask you something. Who here is in band? Okay, right at the front there. What's your name? Lexi. What instrument do you play?
Tenor saxophone.
Tenor saxophone. How long have you been playing?
Since 4th grade, so like 7 years.
7 years. Okay. And when you first picked up the tenor saxophone in 4th grade, were you any good? No. Were you terrible? Probably. Yay. Thank you very much. That proves my point. So obviously, when you start learning an instrument, you kind of expect what we just heard here, that you're not going to be any good. Because it takes practice. It takes years of hard work, of being patient with yourself in order to get anywhere, right? That's the same for any kind of skill that's worth doing. Driving a car, learning to fix cars, anything that you want to do takes time, takes effort, takes patience. Well, writing is no different, and yet some of us who start out writing really kind of put this pressure on ourselves to write perfectly right off the bat. Maybe because we all kind of have the tools of writing. We can all write our name, we can all write, a page of handwriting, no problem. And yet writing well is something different entirely. Okay. So again, I didn't really understand this at the time, and I thought, I'm going to write a letter to my hero, Harlan Ellison, and see if I can maybe get him to tell me what I'm doing wrong. So I hand wrote a letter in my notebook, I tore it out with the little raggedy edges still attached, and I packaged it up and I sent it to him. Well, not 2 weeks later, a fancy letter comes in the mail on expensive stationery with gold lettering for the return address he had written back. And here's an image of that letter. It was, folks, absolutely life-changing. This letter was so encouraging, so nice. And this writer, he was kind of a strange guy, and he was known for being a little bit belligerent, but he was very kind to young fans, I think because he remembered what it was like to be, a weird kid with writing ambitions. And he told me basically some of the things that I'm going to tell you today, but that I didn't believe. Read, write, work hard, and have fun. Okay. So let's zero in on that second writing tip, write, which seems like it would be very obvious, but probably bears repeating. So when you're starting out writing, steal from your favorite authors. Steal shamelessly. What do I mean by that? Don't plagiarize them, obviously. That's not what you want to do. But do what they do. Try to recreate what they are writing. For example, if you read a vampire story and you like it, try to write your own vampire story. Try to study what they're doing and see if you can recreate it yourself. Because you're not really going to be stealing. You're going to put your own spin on it, whether you like it or not. Don't be afraid to write badly. This is very, very important. Again, this is where some of that void of information about writing kind of takes a toll on young writers. We think that everything has to be perfect right from the first draft. Absolutely not. Be prepared that your writing is not going to be great from the start. If you keep working on it, if you keep doing it, if you let yourself explore, it's going to get better eventually. So practice, practice, practice. Be patient and be kind to yourself. So that was what I was kind of trying to do, but I was very hard on myself. If anything, I feel like that letter, while it was supposed to energize me, it actually kind of made me put more pressure on myself. So I was still kind of very, very frustrated. Although I did have a few successes. One of them, for example, is that I won a contest when I was a sophomore in high school. And the prize of this contest was to spend a year watching movies on the Chicago Tribune's dime and writing a weekly movie review column. And I just thought I was so cool. Look at me with my smug face in that picture, looking all fancy. There's a photocopy of one of my articles that I wrote. And actually, later on, one of my articles got picked up and used in a writing textbook. It was my review of Terminator 2, which I thought was far inferior to the original. I was a very opinionated young person. I kept doing it, and I kept trying to see if I could make my writing better. Flash forward to college. Here I am, being goofy with my roommate. And now a little bit about college. I did study English and creative writing, and I still kind of have no idea how I managed to get my parents to sign on for this, because they were absolutely horrified that I would be, if I studied writing, I would eventually be starving in the street. Spoiler alert, I did not starve in the street. English, creative writing, these are common majors for young people who go to college to study writing. Some other ones are journalism, communications, media, things like that. But here's the thing. You don't have to study anything in particular to write. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to go to college. Some of our favorite, most celebrated writers never went to college. Mark Twain, Maya Angelou, Charles Dickens, Ray Bradbury, one of my other favorites from when I was a kid reading science fiction. College is useful mostly because it forces you to do the first two of those building blocks that I was talking about, reading and writing. You're going to be exposed to a lot of literature, which is how you kind of learn how writing works. and you're going to be forced to actually try your hand at it. It also introduces you to some more advanced skills, which I'll go through later, though again, you can get those skills pretty much anywhere. Now, a quick aside to say that in college, I mostly concentrated on writing poetry because I thought it would be easier. Those of you who have written poetry know that nothing is further from the truth. Poetry is, in a lot of ways, more difficult to write because every single word counts. But I'm actually, in retrospect, I'm actually kind of happy that I started with this because it made me really slow down and think about the effect that my language was having. It taught me to concentrate on every single word. So all of the tips, all of these skills that I alluded to that you might learn in college can kind of be summed up in one tip, which is to keep writing. That first point, get feedback. This is very important. For some of you, college will be your first exposure to a writing workshop, which is how a lot of writing classes are run. And basically, you bring a piece of writing to class, the rest of the students, led by the professor, will give you feedback on it. And that can sound a little bit scary. It's a little bit frightening to open yourself up like that, but you need to do it if your writing is going to improve, and I'll tell you why. When you start writing, it seems like it's all about you, right? Expressing your own feelings, your own thoughts, your own sort of point of view. Well, eventually you start to understand that writing, or at least good writing, is less about you than it is about your readers. Writing is a craft, and your material is language. And the point of writing is not just to express what you're thinking, but to use language artfully in a way that makes your reader be able to access what you are trying to tell them. So, a fun fact, I used to run the creative writing workshop right here down the street at Cook Library. And I thought this was really interesting. The thing that I always invariably heard from newer writers when they got feedback that they didn't agree with was they would try to argue. They would try to explain exactly what they meant. And the thing that I always said to them was, when your book is out there on the shelf at Barnes & Noble and some reader picks it up and gets something from it that you didn't intend, are you going to be out there to pop out of the book and correct them? No. You have to make sure that everything you intend is out there on the page already, because you're not going to be there. When you write that book, when you let go of your writing and it goes out into the world, you're not there anymore. You disappear from the process. That book now belongs to the reader, which is why it's so important for you to put everything that you intend the reader to see on the page already. And the key to that is running your writing by other writers over and over and over, or other readers, I should say, so that they can tell you which ones of your intentions are not getting through, okay? That part of the process is very, very important. So once you get that feedback, once you understand that shift to the reader's perspective, it's going to make your writing a lot stronger. So once you get that feedback, revise, revise, revise until you get the language just right. Okay, so after college, I wanted to keep writing, but my family had drilled into me that I needed a steady income. Careers in the arts don't always have a steady income, so I tried to seek out work that had me doing writing-related things. And there are a lot of ways to be a professional writer that don't involve writing literature if that's not your thing. And I've actually been lucky enough to do just about every kind of professional writing there is. So here are some examples. I wrote trivia questions for the game company that is now Jackbox Games, if anyone is familiar with that. There's a trivia question up there. I wrote for a television show based on one of those games. Later on, I worked for a long time at a company that made those noisy educational toys that babies and young kids played with. I'm guessing some of you here have played with some of my work. That was a really fun job. We did a lot of work with licensed characters like Disney, Warner Brothers, things like that. So I did things like write books for kids that based on these characters. There's an example of a book I wrote about Scooby-Doo. I wrote user manuals for these games. I wrote marketing copy. I wrote the stuff that goes on the back of the box. I did all kinds of stuff that was just a really, really broad introduction to all the different kinds of writing that you can do professionally. Some parts of it were fun, some were less fun. And in the meantime, I was still trying to write poems and stories and try to get published. I did have a few successes, but I just really wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't really finding that pleasure from writing that I very much sought after when I was a kid. When I was writing in my journal, when everything just like flowed very easily, that was always sort of the goal for me. It wasn't when I thought about being a writer, I wasn't thinking about awards or being famous or being published. I was thinking more about that pleasure that I got from writing that I could never quite achieve when I was trying to write for an audience. And this was a tremendous source of stress and anxiety to me. I kind of felt like I had failed. And eventually, when I had kids and I was still trying to work full time, I basically just kind of gave up. I thought, well, I guess it's not really meant to be. If I were meant to be a writer, I would have figured it out by now. Until something kind of magical happened. So when I was still working for the toy company, my son, who was about 3 at the time, was diagnosed with autism. And taking care of him with a full-time job got to be too hard. So my family and I made the decision for me to stay home with him, quit my full-time job. Now, we were very lucky and privileged that we were able to do this because I know it's not an option that's available to every family. Now, when he got a bit older and went to school and I had a bit more time, I decided I would try to pick up some freelance work that I could do from home while he was in school. And I came across a ghostwriting job. For those of you who aren't familiar with ghostwriting, it basically means writing so that someone else can put their name on your work. And it's just basically another way to be a professional writer. So I came across this ghostwriting job that required me to write a series of paranormal romance stories where a woman who sees dead people, who sees ghosts, helps her FBI boyfriend solve crimes. It was a bit of a silly idea, but it was a job, it made some money, and I had to do it fast. I had to do it on a deadline. I had to turn these stories around lickety-split, one after another. I didn't have time to worry about how good they were. I didn't have time to worry about making them perfect. Who cared, right? My name wasn't even going to be on them. I just had to get them done. And that was when something magical happened. It was like, for me, it was like the skies opened up and the rains came. It was, for the first time ever, I was literally staying up at night writing these stories. I couldn't get enough. I couldn't wait to get back to writing so I could figure out where the story was going to go next, so I could manipulate that language and finally feel that pleasure that I had been chasing all my life. And this was what, when I was reading Mr. Ellison, whenever he would write essays about writing, he always talked about how wonderful it was to write, how pleasurable it was, how he would go into these writing trances that basically made everything else fall away and make the writing kind of the prize itself. And that was what I had been chasing all my life and what I had finally been able to achieve by writing these kind of silly stories. And that brings me to my final writing tip, and probably the most important one of all. Have fun. Because the thing is, without the fun, you're not going to get anywhere. You won't be able to motivate yourself to keep writing. No deadline, no class, no fancy laptop or writing software will make you write if you're not enjoying it. If, on the other hand, you have found what makes writing feel good for you, nothing will stop you. And that was my experience as well. Because we do what feels good. That's just kind of how human brains work. So if you want to write and you're struggling, find a way to do it that feels good. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking, keep exploring, because what's fun for another writer might not work for you. There are as many writing processes as there are writers. So again, for me, for example, writing in my journal was always easy and fun. That was something I never ever had to force myself to do. So now, every time I'm struggling to write, every time I feel a little bit of writer's block where I come to a part of my story that isn't working, I do what comes easily. I sit down and start journaling about whatever part of the story I'm stuck on, whatever is not falling into place, and then just kind of throwing out ideas, throwing out thoughts, not worrying about putting it on paper for an audience. And then invariably, my mind settles in, and before I know it, the journaling, the writing about the story, becomes the story itself. And that's, for me, there's something about the feeling of the pen on the paper and the slowness of handwriting. There's something about that that kind of turns off my internal editor and makes it easier for me to write. Now, that's just what works for me. That's not something that might necessarily work for you. But my point is, there's always something. There's always some way to trick your mind, if you have to, into getting into that writing frame of mind. And eventually, you won't need the tricks. So when that assignment was over, and I will admit to you that those stories are probably not the best thing I've ever written. They're gone from the internet, thank goodness, good riddance. But after they were over, I thought, you know what, maybe I can do this myself. Maybe I have it in me to write the novel that I always was hoping that maybe I could write. Any guesses for how long it took me to write that novel? Just go ahead and shout them out if you have them. Nope, not 5 years. 3 years. Nope. 17. Okay, going overboard. 10 years. That's how long it took me. Now, there were it was kind of on and off. There were a lot of off periods in those 10 years, but I kept coming back to it because I knew that I could do it, even when life got in the way. So here's a little bit from some scenes from those years and what those 10 years looked like. A lot of handwriting, a lot of filling notebooks with what my daughter calls serial killer handwriting, because my handwriting is terrible. My novels are about tarot cards, so I did some research on tarot cards. I worked with my local police department to kind of get some research in on how law enforcement around here works. I even have a map, because I'm this much of a nerd. That image up at the very top there is a map of my fictional suburb that is based on this one. So as you can see, a lot of work, a lot of patience, a lot of sort of having to backtrack and stop and start again. A lot of reading, writing, improving, and having fun. Before I had a manuscript that I thought was ready for publication. And here is me receiving my pre-publication finished copies of my book. Now again, we're looking at this fancy glossy book and we're not seeing all of the work that went into it. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit about how many times I had to rewrite this book before I got to this point. I don't wanna talk too much about the publication process because it's long and complicated and I could stand here forever and talk to you about it. But basically the way it works is if you want your book traditionally published, you have to interest a literary agent in it who will then sell it to a publisher who will then publish it. Lots of steps, and they're all extremely difficult. So when I thought I had a final version of my manuscript, I sent it to over 100 literary agents. No one wanted it. So I did a mentorship program where 2 more experienced writers helped me revise the manuscript with the hope that a literary agent would eventually be interested in it. Rewrote the whole thing top to bottom. I was able to get a literary agent with that manuscript. She made me rewrite it top to bottom. Okay, so then I thought, all right, well, this is it, right? No, she went out and she sold it to a publisher. That publisher made me rewrite it 3 more times. At that point, I had just lost track. But here's the thing. That novel would not be the novel that's out there today that I'm very proud of without all of that feedback and revision and messing around and patience and work. And that is the part that you never really see. That's sort of the mystery of writing. We never know exactly how those books get from here to there. We never see all of that work. And the key for me, the solution to the mystery was to find a way to have fun doing it. So I'm going to refer to my close personal friend Taylor Swift, who will tell you what I just told you. Let's see if we can get this to work this time.
I would love to tell you that this is the best moment of my life, but I feel this happy when I finish a song, or when I crack the code to a bridge that I love, or when I'm shot listing a music video, or when I'm rehearsing with my dancers or my band, or getting ready to go to Tokyo to play a show. For me, the award is the work. All I want to do is keep being able to do this. I love it so much. It makes me so happy. It makes me unbelievably blown away that it makes some people happy who voted for this award too. All I want to do is keep doing this. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do what I love so much.
Thank you, Taylor. So that really is the key. I think she summed it up perfectly. The work is the reward. If you're not having fun doing the work, I have to tell you, I'm going to be a little bit honest with you here, there aren't that many other reasons to do it. Very few writers get rich and famous. Very few writers become kind of rise to the top of their field to be super visible. If you're writing for those things, you could possibly be disappointed because there aren't all of that many external awards like that available. The award has to be the work itself. And that, to me, is the solution to the mystery. So I'd like to thank you for letting me talk about that today, and I want to open up the floor for any questions that anyone might have. Yes?
So I read your book, Play the Fool, and in that book, the main character uses tarot cards, and I'm just wondering, where did you get the idea to have that as the main character? Because the tarot cards become incredibly important throughout the book. Like, I don't want to say how or why, because I feel like they might spoil something.
Sure.
But could you kind of talk about like where the inspiration for that came from?
Sure. So the question was about my book. My book involves an amateur sleuth who is a tarot card reader, and the question was where the inspiration for the tarot cards came from. I did actually, when I was younger, sort of try my hand at doing something that this tarot card reader does in the book, which is just basically try to make a little money reading cards for people. And it was a very, very interesting experience because I was pretty much self-taught. I'll be honest, I was kind of making it up. But there was always a point in the reading when whoever I was reading for would sort of lock in and say, oh my goodness, that's exactly what's going on in my life. The cards must be magic, or you must be magic, or something. And I was like, me? Because the magic certainly wasn't coming from me. But it taught me something very important, that tarot cards, for me, I don't believe that there's any magic in it, but I do believe that they're sort of a representation of the human tendency to tell stories. They're a symbol of storytelling for me. We all tell stories to make sense of, what is pretty much a random life. And because there's only so many different ways that a story can go, when you're sitting across from one and kind of trying to figure out their life, they're going to recognize some of the things you say. That's just kind of how it works. And so the experience of reading tarot cards always kind of stuck with me as a symbol of the magic of storytelling. And when it came time to figure out what I was going to write my novel about, that was sort of in the back of my mind. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much.